Welcome everyone to this LinkedIn Live session from LTI. Today's topic is designing the future for software engineering. I'm your host today, Archana Joshi, and I'm part of the New Ways of Working group looking at transforming different experiences for our clients. We also have with us Brijesh Prabhakar, who heads our New Ways of Working within LTI. And Brijesh, welcome to the session today.
Thank you, Archana, and welcome to all our viewers as well. I do hope all of you are safe given the current situation and excited to be talking about the future of software engineering.
Yeah. So just to get our viewers into the groove of modern software engineering, my very first question to you, Brijesh, would be is that given that we all are working from home, working remotely, how do you see this whole COVID situation has affected what we have been used to doing from a software standpoint, especially developing softwares and testing softwares and the whole thing of making sure that we are able to deliver things on time from a overall perspective?
So, Archana, I think there has been a huge impact, and there will be a legacy because of COVID. So let's look at it. Let's take a step back, right? And if you were to look at any engineering processes and principles that most disciplines follow, including IT, we tend to look at all of this in three different areas, right? One is you address the people issues, we talk about the processes, and we talk about tools. And these three things have always for a long time been very discrete and disparate kind of items. And it works well. It used to work well when people used to come to a place and could afford for these three items to be separate. But now when people are all working from home or largely working from home, right? We talk about hybrid, but anyway, let's just say remote. In this case, the idea of collaboration is a very different idea of collaboration. It's not what it used to be before. These three things have to come together, right? So when we talk about people, it's no longer just trained people. It's just no longer about skills, right? It's also it's more to do about developer experience, right? When we talk about processes today, you don't have the time or the energy to actually learn processes, right? Or unlearn old processes. So you have to make sure that the processes are intuitive, for the people who are working on software. And tooling, we were okay with a lot of the tools that we were using for a long time because that's the way it was always supposed to work. But today, I think the needs of different types of tooling have changed, right? So, and that's where we talk about a scalable technology stack, for the tooling side. So, in my view, I think three things will become very important: the developer experience built, the intuitive processes that you can engineer for your teams, and finally the tech stack that you can actually provide your engineers for them to build some great software.
Yeah, thanks for that and interesting views, right? So developer experience, what do you mean by that? Because we always speak about customer experience, employee experience, and now you're talking about developer experience, and that being, I would say, foremost in terms of modern software engineering. So could you throw some light around developer experience and especially use an example to explain that to us?
Yeah, think about it. A developer, when you have a good time, you are more productive. You feel that you're doing something of value, right? And that has got a very positive effect, on the people working. So when we talk about developer experience, look at the old world, right? You had to have laptops configured, for a particular build. And many times, even if you get an access to a laptop, you have to individually go in and provision, the tools that you need, even things like Eclipse, for example, or any IDEs, right? It takes some time. And then you wait for permissions, right? How did we manage this? All of this was ticket based. Somebody made a call to a help desk and said, you know what, I need a Unix box with, some configuration. I need a database with this license, or that was what it took, right? That is time consuming, quite frankly. And I, as a developer, and I've actually written code many years ago, I found that very frustrating, right? So for us, the way we have actually looked at developer experience, in the context of what we're doing today, is to look at onboarding a pod. How quickly can I get a pod onboarded, right? A pod of different types of skills coming together. How quickly can they come together, right? Second one is, can I provision tools in order to click of a button, right? Can I make the provisioning of tools and environments very seamless, for people? And the last one is about knowledge, because please understand, when you get a pod, you got people of different skills, but they all need to have some kind of a baseline understanding of what is being built. So for me, developer experience is a mix of these three very crucial components coming together. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
It does, and it kind of, when you were speaking about your own example, I was kind of trying to see what happened in my case as well, and I very well can relate to the fact that I still remember when I joined one of our clients, and it took almost 4 weeks for me to get a laptop, and the laptop which is functional, not just the unit, right, which is functional, where I can actually sit and code. And I was definitely relating to that, saying, yeah, if I would have got what you say, where it's a click of a button, certain tools and certain like Eclipse like environment and all, I'm sure I would have been very happy and more productive. So
So,
yeah, sorry, go ahead, you were saying
so
something.
Archana, so I know we keep talking about experience, but there's other key thing, Archana. I mean, you've been working a lot on the process side. You've seen how things have changed, in the last 5 to 6 months. What are your views on the process, on the process side of things?
Yeah. So interesting you asked that. Usually when we talk about the processes, and I know people, the moment they hear process, they are like, yeah, here is another team which is setting up processes and frameworks and trying to make things work for us, but we will keep on doing the things the way we always wanted to, right? And that's where getting that change imbibed into the way you work and making sure the processes that you have set needs to be run and executed and adhered to in a particular manner takes effort, right? And now when you have people working remotely, it's even difficult to monitor, control, understand what exactly is happening on the ground.
Right.
Getting that transparency is also becoming difficult. And hence, if you have any platforms, if you have any solutions which are going to make those processes intuitive, then that's going to be much more better for the people who are developing and designing those software. To give you an example, imagine that, let's say, you are a scrum master, and scrum masters typically look at certain metrics like velocity and burn down charts, and then the story points, user stories that are getting delivered, and so on and so forth, right? But as a scrum master who is working with a complete remote agile team, they need to understand not just these parameters, they also need to make sure that security lapses are not happening. They also need to make sure that when people are stuck, those impediments are flowing back quickly. And hence, if you have a collaborative solution, let's say something like a MS Teams, and MS Teams configured well, because I know many instances, many clients of ours which use MS Teams, and when you go and ask them, what do you do there? They would say, I would probably use it for direct messaging or probably just setting up some meeting or something. But beyond that, do you are using those collaboration systems to pull data from so many disparate networks that you have within your software delivery, and then push the right set of data to the scrum master so that they can take those intuitive decisions and reach out to the team members, engage with them in a good way is important.
Right.
Second problem, right? So the way we spoke about collaboration and making sure collaboration becomes iterative. The second thing is, people talk about collective code ownership, right? So collective code ownership in agile context is essentially that anyone can pick up any story, people can change, check in the code, and your pipeline kind of gives you those results on an immediate basis, whether your code, whatever you have written, is right or wrong, right? Collective code ownership is an absolutely great concept, but doing that is difficult because a developer, and imagine a developer who is fresh from college, who is touching a piece of code which has been written by somebody senior in the team. They would need to have that confidence saying that they can deliver it in a good way. They need to understand what is this code dependent on. They need to understand what are the areas or defects which have been seen in this type of code earlier on. They need to understand if they do a change here, which other user stories and epics are getting impacted.
Right.
So if you have machine learning based solutions, which will make this whole thinking of the entire process of collective code ownership intuitive, that's going to be much better. Another example, I still remember I was speaking with one of our large financial clients, and they pretty much use Agile a lot. And their complaint was, Archana, every time we start off Agile, we have to go and set up those boards. We have to set up our ALM tools. We need to set up our pipelines, and it's time consuming. And every single time we end up spending almost a week or two just doing that. And then when we looked at it, and this was a very recent one happening during the COVID state, when we looked at it, we realized that it was very easy to codify the entire way of working, which means every time I start off a project, my sprint zero and those standard tasks is something which is templatized. Things of the dashboards and the tools and the information that I need to look at is templatized. So that's a whole lot of codifying the way of working, right? So when you asked me a question of intuitive processes, I say intuitive processes are absolutely needed. Using collaboration, making sure collaboration is intuitive, making sure your way of working is codified, as well as making sure you are using machine learning and AI techniques to inculcate those right behaviors in your developer team. So that's how I kind of look at it on where the process aspect is moving towards in this modern engineering world.
Yeah, and I think, Archana, I think very nicely put, and I can also empathize with some of these issues, right? Especially this is very important, especially when you have a diverse set of people coming together. When I say diverse set of people, people from different cultural backgrounds, people from different organizations, right? It's not just one vendors or one set of people who are trained in a particular way, because today most large enterprise applications are built by people that cuts across different organizations. So I absolutely see the point. We also wanted to talk about the tech stack, and I think that's the very interesting last piece. We did speak about the entire idea of having building experiences for developers. We spoke about the intuitive nature of the processes that we want to put in. And the third leg of the stool, is the entire dev stack. And I think for a long time today, there has been a lot of focus on how we build applications, right? I mean, we've been talking about, loosely coupled APIs, talking to each other, real time largely, right? We also have been talking about containerizing these applications. We've also been talking about scalable architecture, right? This has been what it's been. But now if you take a step back and say, can I make all of this available to developers? Can my development tools have these kind of characteristics and not just the code that we actually deploy, right? So when we talk about a curated tech stack, right, today there are lots of tools in the market, right? And many times these tools don't talk to each other. So I might write code somewhere, or I might even have the ability to check in, but a check-in automatically does not mean that a build happens and then it goes to the pipeline directly, right? And why doesn't it happen? Why do I need a separate tool now to go in and do something else? Can I make something event-based? Those are the kind of things that today will actually improve our ability to deploy code faster. And this entire idea of quality at speed, and we've been talking about it in LTI now for the last probably a year and a half, right? How do we deliver quality at speed? It can't be delivered if your tools don't talk to each other, if your pipelines are not set, or failure proof, right? And I think that's where we have also looked at, shaping a few things. So, number one is, of course, if you can have all our tools configured that they can talk to each other through APIs, absolutely yes. Can you also containerize a lot of the work that, the dev tools that we have? I mean, why should this be a desktop tool, right? And I think that's the beauty of it, right? The moment you start talking containerization, you can apply this to anything. You can tear it down when you don't need it. You can bring it back up when you need it, especially if it's going to be costly, right? Um, and of course, create an environment of tools that can plug and play with each other. And I think, and I always feel, right, if you can bring some of these aspects together through a platform, nothing like it. So I think in the last 3 months, that's what we've been spending our time on, right? In fact, I should say last 5 months, that's what we've been spending our time on, right? Is to actually build something that can actually bring these three things together, right? The idea of the developer experience, the intuitive processes, and of course the scalable tools, Archana.
So you spoke about these three things of developer experience, intuitive processes, looking at scalable technology stacks and all. And you also said last 5 months you've been doing something around it. So could you give an insight in terms of what is it that you guys have developed and what is it that's done to make sure these three things are coming together in a homogeneous way that you explained when we started this conversation?
Right. So I think, by the month of March, we knew something big is going to hit us, right? And I think that's where a lot of our leadership, especially with Nachiket, who's our COO, as well as Siddharth Bora, who's our CBO for our business lines, basically came in and came up with something called XFH, right? The idea of having everything from home, where X is everything, all right, or anything, right? So we started off with this operationalizing, people so that they can start working, then securing, the delivery outputs. Then we spoke about productivity, and finally we spoke about growth. So we had this 5-level tech, kind of a stack, like a triangle, and that got us around thinking, how do we codify this? How do we actually bring this to life? And that's where the journey of creating a platform called LTI Canvas started, right? And that's where we started looking at productivity through a very different set of lenses. We started looking at it from a very different perspective. And that's, and that's where we also built this in partnership with Microsoft, given the breadth of tools that they already have. How did we build it? This was designed in remote. Nobody had seen this. Nobody had met each other. All the conversations that we had when we built it, including the whiteboarding, the architecture design, the reviews, were all done, like this, right? Looking at people through a laptop, right? And that's what happened. The second one is we built it using the same principles that we were talking about now. We focused on the developer. We focused on the personas of the developer. So if you are a Scrum Master, what are the 5 things that you would need? Right? If you're a developer, if you're a person who's writing code and checking in code and testing code, what are the things that you need? If you're a product owner, right, what do you need? And I think we brought in a very outside-in perspective rather than creating a tool and saying now you the developer learn this, right? And I think that was a very outside-in approach. The third one is this was actually built completely on cloud, right? This was actually built on the cloud for the cloud by a set of very sharp cloud engineers, right? And I think that's the beauty of it, right? So many times you still do the development on-prem, and then you kind of migrate the code to a production environment on the cloud. Here we did it exactly. We said this is going to be born in cloud, and that's what we did. And the fourth one is our ability to collaborate with partners. Right. So, of course, Microsoft was a big part of it, and, we'll look at expanding that relationship, to other cloud providers probably. But then we also were able to pull in tools like Cast, for technical debt calculation, right? All of this is part of the Canvas fabric, right? This is part of the Canvas stack of capabilities that you can get. So the idea now becomes that, if as a developer you come in, you don't need to look at anything else but a browser interface or a workbench where you can set up, a project. You can provision VDIs, you can provision environments. You can templatize them so that they become repeatable. You get automated reports on usage of your cloud services. You have a way of looking at shared consumption or dedicated consumption models, so that if you're looking at cost, you can time slice a lot of things. You can do a lot of push notification from systems coming into collaboration tools like MS Teams, right? And I think that was what went into creating this. And it was created by very, very junior folks. We had senior architects, looking at it, yes, but I think the passion that the team, demonstrated when they actually built this stuff, especially during COVID, was phenomenal.
Great. That's really nice to hear. So if I could just try and summarize some of the things that you spoke about on LTI Canvas. So I would say it definitely looks at bringing in three things together of your developer experience, of your intuitive process, and your standardized technology stack. But that is not all. It also is cloud first. It is
Yep.
also is secure first. It is also is remote first for
Yep.
sure. And it also is agile and DevOps first, which is I think where the future of software engineering is more and more going towards, right? I do see one of a question that has come in. The question that we see here is, what do you think about knowledge management? Where does knowledge management play a role? Do you think it has a role, or is it like everything is being done on the fly? What would you say there?
I think, well, actually, I'll also let you answer this because I know you've been fairly close to
Okay,
this as well. But
sure.
just take the step back. I think if you were to look at it, knowledge is a very precious thing today. It
Mhm.
has always been a precious thing, right? And typically these were embedded with people, SMEs, right? And people took pride in saying that I know everything about this particular set of tools or this particular set of functions. Um, but the point is today with the prevalence and the maturity of and the continuing maturity, I should say, right, of machine learning and AI, and our ability to correlate very different things, right, makes it a lot more easier for us to harvest this knowledge, right? In fact, my question back to you, Archana, is you've been talking about transition for quite some time, and how do you harness knowledge? What has that experience been? I know you've been also been building things around it.
Right, right. So I would probably answer that using an example, right? So recently we were taking a large scale transition from one of our for one of our clients from an incumbent vendor. And when I say large scale, it involved applications, infra as well, and this was in the manufacturing sector. And obviously, the question was that given COVID, can you guys do it? How are you going to do it? And it's not just about transition, it's also about knowledge, as you rightly said, because people are now remote, they don't know each other, they can't go to a water cooler and have certain conversations, they can't just walk to a person sitting next to them and ask them how this needs to be done. So in those cases, how do you build that tacit knowledge experience with the team and also capture it during a transition stage is a big challenge. And that's exactly something that we were looking at when our Canvas solution was being built, right? That can we leverage solutions like reverse engineering? Can we look at solutions which give you tech debt analysis? Can we look at solutions which do your security analysis? Can we look at solutions which give you business process flow reengineering pieces? Can we look at solutions which read documents and build a correlation engine across all of these things so that you can distill that knowledge using certain platforms and frameworks and tools so that this reliance on a person is reduced as much as possible. It definitely will not go away and it shouldn't go away. You should talk to people more, in fact, even more in this pandemic situation. But you should also augment it with certain solutions which will help you aid that knowledge extraction even better. So I think that was something which we looked at, and that of course enhanced not just the developer experience and our support engineer experience, but also the overall experience working with the client. So I would say for everyone, it was a win-win, and that was something which we are proud to have been associated with and done with. Yeah. So I'm looking at the time as well. I think we've been talking quite a bit, and I know this conversation is first of the series that we are having on the future of software engineering. So we would be having lot more such LinkedIn live sessions coming your way. So I would probably just ask one last question, Brijay, saying that um, in your mind, how would you sum up the future of software engineering if you say in one line or just quick some basic keywords that you would want to put out for our viewers before we wind this off?
No, you really put me in a spot. I don't think we rehearsed this, but anyway, let me try. Right? Uh, See, I think at the end of it, I keep going back to what we started this entire thing, right? If happy developers make good software, because I think there have just been too many barriers to good software engineering in the past. And I think today, when we talk about productivity, it's always been on outputs, less focus on outcomes. So coming back, I think I'd go back to the first credo, right, which is developer experience. I think if you can make that if every CIO were to now start looking at developer experience a lot more, we figured out the customer experience part. We have done it to death, right? But I think it's time to look inwards because productivity starts from inside. So, and that's what I would basically look at, actually.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Brijesh, for joining us today on this LinkedIn Live sessions. Thank you, viewers, for joining us today for this LinkedIn Live sessions. As I mentioned, this is first of the series that we have coming your way. So stay tuned to more of these sessions from LTI. Thank you, everyone, and have a safe working day wherever you are. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all. Stay safe.